This happened in late 2023, just before winter break. I was around 15, and my friend Tara had invited 3 of us to her house for a weekend sleepover. She lived about 30 minutes outside the city, in a quiet area with only a few houses spread far apart. Her backyard stretched into a large open field that ended at the woods. It was the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked, or so I thought. Tara's parents were gone that weekend. They had left early Saturday morning for a short trip and wouldn't be back until Sunday night. They knew all of us well and trusted Tara. I had been to her place before, and nothing had ever felt unsafe. That afternoon was completely normal. We watched a movie, played cards, and made a huge mess in the kitchen trying to bake brownies. By the time it got dark, we were all tired. We changed into pajamas and settled in the living room with snacks and blankets. Around 10:30 p.m. We were halfway through a horror movie when the outdoor motion light flicked on. The living room window faced the driveway, and the sudden brightness caught my attention. I looked outside but didn't see anything. I figured maybe it was a raccoon, or one of the neighbor's cats passing by. Tara's dog was upstairs in her room. She didn't bark or react, which made me think it wasn't anything serious. Then, 10 minutes later, the light came on again. This time, everyone noticed. We joked that maybe a ghost was wandering around, then turned the movie back on. But the third time the light came on, it stayed on longer than before. I didn't say anything out loud, but something felt different. It wasn't just flicking on and off, it was like something had triggered it, and then stayed there. Tara got up and locked the front door, even though it had already been shut. I started to feel uneasy, but I tried not to show it. About 15 minutes later, the motion light came on again. This time, we didn't wait. We paused the movie, and all 4 of us went to the window. The light was still on, and at first, everything looked the same. Then my friend Isabella pointed toward the edge of the property. Near the tree line, just past the end of the driveway, someone was crouching. It wasn't obvious at first. The figure was low to the ground, half covered by one of the larger trees. But once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. I kept telling myself it was just a shadow, or something else that made sense, but the shape didn't move. It just stayed there. Tara stepped back first and whispered that we should call the police. She grabbed her phone and went upstairs to get a better signal. A few minutes later, she came back down and said the police were sending a car to check it out. They told her not to open any doors and to stay inside. 20 minutes passed. Then we saw the red and blue lights pull into the driveway. 2 officers stepped out of the car and began walking the property with flashlights. We stayed by the window, watching as they looked around the yard, slowly sweeping their beams over the grass and trees. Then they disappeared along the side of the house. About 5 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. One of the officers stood there and told us they hadn't found anyone. He asked a few questions, how long we'd seen the person, what he looked like, but none of us had gotten a clear view. He said it was probably someone just passing through or walking along the road. They wrote down Tara's name and told us to call again if anything else happened. After the officers left, we made sure the door was locked, then checked every window twice. The motion light stayed off. We didn't put the movie back on. No one wanted to. We just sat around the living room for a while in silence. Eventually, we moved our sleeping bags upstairs to Tara's bedroom. Even though we'd planned to sleep in the living room, it felt safer being higher up, with the dog in the same room. In the morning, we came downstairs, still tired, but trying to act normal. Tara started making toast while we moved around the kitchen, avoiding eye contact. I walked over to the window and looked out toward the driveway. That's when I noticed something. In the patch of dirt near the back door, there were footprints. Not a lot, just a few, but they were fresh. You could see the clear tread marks from boots, all pointing toward the house. The mud wasn't dry yet, which meant they hadn't been there long. I called the others over, and we all went to look. One of the footprints was right up against the back door. Whoever it was, had been standing there. Maybe even trying the handle. Tara said the back door had been locked. We checked it again, and thankfully, it was still secure. But the thought of someone walking up that close, after the police had already come and gone, made everything feel worse. Tara's parents came home later that evening. Her dad walked around the backyard, looked everything over, and said it was probably just a trespasser passing through. But that same night, he added new locks to both doors, and moved a security camera out to the porch. We didn't talk about it much after that. None of us wanted to make it into a bigger deal than it already was. But I didn't go back to Tara's house for a long time after that weekend. And none of us ever figured out who that man was. Or why he stayed so long behind that tree. This happened in 2022, when I was 13. It was a Friday night at the start of summer, and I was sleeping over at my friend Jordan's house. There were 4 of us that night, me, Jordan, Tyler, and William. We lived in a nice town where nothing really happened. The kind of place where people left their bikes out overnight, and no one worried. We were in the living room, half watching a scary movie and eating snacks, when Tyler brought up the house next door. The one everyone said was abandoned. It had been empty for years, but some kids claimed they saw lights inside at night. No one ever proved it, and over time, the rumors just turned into random stories. Then Tyler said we should go in. At first, we laughed, thinking he was joking. But he was serious. He called it a dare. Said if we didn't go, we were cowards, and none of us wanted to be that person. So we waited until Jordan's mom had gone to bed. Then we grabbed a flashlight and slipped out through the back door. The flashlight lit the way as we quietly crossed into the neighbor's yard and stepped through the back of the old house. Inside, everything was silent. We moved through the hallway slowly, passing empty rooms and dusty, dirty floors. At the end of the hall, we saw a staircase leading up. At the top was a narrow hallway with 3 closed doors, 2 on the left, 1 on the right. We opened the first door on the left. It was empty. The second door wouldn't budge, so we moved to the one on the right. Tyler opened it. Inside was a small bedroom, almost clean compared to the rest of the house. The walls were bare, but the room had a table, a wooden chair, and something on the floor. We stepped in, shining the flashlight around. That's when we saw them. Pictures. Dozens of them, scattered across the floor. Photos of us. Some of the photos were from school. Some were taken on our street. And some were from inside our homes. There was also a map on the table. Our names were written in different places across it. Notes marked our houses, the times we left for school, who we walked with, even what we wore. It was all written down, like a schedule. Jordan reached for the map. He folded it and stuffed it into the pocket of his hoodie. Then, in the corner of the room, we saw something else. A small camcorder. It was on. A red light blinked from the front. That meant it was recording. Jordan whispered, "We have to go." We backed out of the room. We walked quickly down the stairs, past the empty hallway, through the open door, and back into the yard. Then we went straight into Jordan's house and locked the door behind us. Jordan placed the folded map on the table. We all stood around it in silence. It listed our names. Our routines. School schedules. Even which direction we walked home. William told Jordan to call the police. He didn't argue. He grabbed the landline and made the call. The officer on the phone asked a few questions, then said they'd send someone right away. About 15 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. We let them in and showed them the map. We explained everything, what we saw in the upstairs room, the photos, the camera. The officers took the map and told us to stay inside. Then they left and walked next door to search the house. It took them about 20 minutes. When they returned, they said the place was empty. Jordan asked if they found the photographs, or the camcorder. One of the officers shook his head. He said they saw the table. The chair. But nothing else. No pictures. No camera. The room had been full of photos when we left it. The camcorder was still recording. And now, it was gone. One of the officers said that without anything solid, there wasn't much they could do. The map we found, by itself, wasn't enough. We stayed in the living room for the rest of the night. No one felt like sleeping. No one really talked. We just waited until morning. When the sun finally came up, we started packing our things. Before I left, I looked out the window at the house next door. It looked exactly the same as before. But after what happened, we never went near that house again. This happened 2 years ago, when I was 16. My best friend Ryan invited 3 of us to spend the weekend at his house while his parents were away. His family lived just a few blocks from mine, in a nice neighborhood. The kind of place where kids rode their bikes until dark, and people left their porch lights on out of habit, not fear. Ryan's house was older, but well kept. It had a big front yard, with hedges lining the driveway. The living room, where we planned to sleep, had a large window that looked straight out onto the yard and the street beyond. We dragged our sleeping bags onto the floor and stayed up late, playing video games and talking about random things. Then, around midnight, the energy started to fade. We turned off the games and just sat around, half awake, barely talking. That's when I had the idea. I thought it would be funny to sneak outside, tap on the window, and scare them. I grabbed my shoes, unlocked the back door quietly, and stepped out into the night. I kept low, trying not to make any noise, and stayed close to the hedges as I moved toward the front yard. The plan was simple. I'd sneak up to the living room window, tap it just hard enough to get their attention, then hide before they could see me. But as I reached the corner of the house and crouched low behind a bush, I froze. Someone else was already standing in front of the living room window. They were about 10 feet from me, perfectly still, facing the glass. For a moment, I thought maybe one of the guys had seen me leave and decided to turn the prank around. But it wasn't Ryan. And it wasn't anyone I knew. The figure was taller. Broader in the shoulders. Wearing dark clothes. I couldn't see his face clearly, just the outline of his body. He wasn't tapping the window. He wasn't moving at all. And he definitely wasn't trying to get their attention. He was just watching. Standing there, completely still. My mind raced, trying to figure out what to do. If I moved, he might see me. If I stayed, I had no idea what he would do next. My prank had led me straight into something I didn't understand. Something that felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. And the worst part was that the others inside still had no idea. Staying frozen wouldn't help if he decided to come closer. I shifted slowly, keeping low, and began moving backward along the hedge toward the side of the house. When I reached the side of the house, I moved quicker, crossing the backyard. I reached the back door without making a sound and slipped inside, locking it behind me. The living room lights were still on. Ryan and the others were stretched out on their sleeping bags, facing the television. I walked over to Ryan and grabbed his arm to get his attention. Without a word, I pointed toward the front window. Ryan got up and turned off the television. The others noticed something was wrong and sat up, watching us. Ryan walked to the front window, pulled the curtain aside just a little, and looked outside. But when he didn't see anyone, he shrugged it off, thinking I was trying to pull another prank. We moved our sleeping bags closer together in the center of the living room. Then, around 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard it. A dull thud coming from the side of the house. I stayed still, listening. A few seconds later, a soft scraping sound followed, like something brushing against the wall. Ryan sat up and looked at me. His face was tense. He had heard it, too. I got up slowly, moved toward the back of the house, and kept low. I checked the back door. It was still locked. I stayed there in the dark, waiting, listening. For a long time, there was nothing. As I stood there, I thought about what had happened earlier. Whoever the figure was, he had been outside. I knew the side gate to the backyard had a weak latch. If someone pushed hard enough, they could get through easily. I made my way back to the living room and quietly gestured for the others to stay down. Without speaking, I picked up Ryan's phone from the floor. I unlocked it and dialed for help. The call connected, and I whispered enough information for the operator to understand the situation. After what felt like forever, headlights appeared outside. A police car pulled up in front of the house. One officer stepped out, scanning the yard with a flashlight. Another thud came from the side of the house, louder this time. The officer moved quickly, and there was a short commotion outside, muffled voices and the sound of running footsteps. Several minutes later, the officer knocked at the door and identified himself. He stepped inside and explained what had happened. They had caught a man trying to get through the side gate. He didn't have any weapons, but he carried a crowbar and gloves. He claimed he was just looking for a place to sleep, but the officer said it was more likely he was trying to break in after seeing the house full of teenagers alone. They searched the yard and found footprints leading from the sidewalk to the window, then around the side of the house. The figure I had seen earlier had been real. And he had not left. He had stayed nearby, waiting for an opportunity. The police took him away, and one officer stayed outside until Ryan's parents returned early the next morning. By daylight, the house felt normal again. The living room looked like any other messy sleepover spot, with empty snack bags and crumpled sleeping bags. But it wasn't the same. I knew how close we had come to something much worse. I got home from work around midnight, almost 1 a.m. I've been doing night shifts for the past 3 years, so I'm used to coming home late. My neighborhood is usually very quiet at that time. I live in a small, peaceful area with rows of houses and lots of families. After 10 p.m., the streets are empty. Most houses have their lights off by then. In all these years, I've only seen someone walking outside late at night maybe 4 or 5 times. So, when I saw a person on the sidewalk that night, it caught me off guard. They were walking slowly, not really going anywhere, so it felt strange right away. I was sitting in my parked car in front of my house, talking to my boyfriend on the phone before going inside. I was just relaxing, not really thinking about anything. Then, out of habit, I looked at my side mirror, and that's when I saw someone. I noticed legs moving as they walked, and there was a bright light with them. It looked like it could have been a phone flashlight, but it was too bright, almost like a small torch. As soon as the person reached the sidewalk across from my car, they just stopped walking. Then, slowly, the light started to rise. It didn't shake or move around like someone waving a flashlight. It moved smoothly, on purpose, until it pointed straight at my side mirror, right at me. The light hit the mirror just right, and I could feel it shining straight into my face. I was still on the phone while I reached down to grab my keys. My hands were shaking so badly, I dropped them once and had to feel around the seat to find them. I kept thinking, don't look up. I was scared. I don't know why, but I felt like if I looked again, the light would be much closer. Like whoever was holding it would be standing right outside my window. After what felt like a long time, I finally found my keys. The car started, and I drove out of the neighborhood. As the car turned the corner, the light disappeared from sight. I tried to explain everything over the phone, but the fear was too strong. The only thought in my head was to get far away from that street. In the direction the person was walking, there was a big mailbox where they might have hidden, but other than that, there was nothing else around. No cars, no fences, no trees, just a wide, empty sidewalk. Even on the streets I passed while driving to my boyfriend's place, not a single person was seen. The thought that someone might have been hiding, not wanting to be seen, was deeply frightening. It's still unclear what I saw that night, but the way the light pointed directly at the mirror didn't feel like an accident. It felt on purpose.